We'll get started in a few minutes. Welcome, everyone.
Okay.
All right, it's 12:01. I'll get us started so we have enough time for our session today. Well, good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Chabdi, the Associate Director of the Health and Wellbeing Program with the WorkWell Center here at USC, and your host for today. And happy May Mental Health Awareness Month to all of you. We're excited to be here today to celebrate with all of you. And today we are sharing Mental Health Matters, sponsored by the USC WorkWell Center's Healthy Campus Mental Health Subcommittee. The goal of our series and our session is really to raise awareness about mental health, reduce stigma, and provide support and community. So over the next 50 minutes or so, our speaker will be sharing their expertise around this important topic, as well as resources, and engage you in conversation through the chat. Feel free to make any comments you like in the chat or ask any questions, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A, as well as a evaluation form that you all can fill out. So let's get started. I am honored to introduce our special guest doing our opening remarks today. It is my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Ellen Sachs, the Orrin B. Evans Distinguished Professor of Law and Psychology and Psychiatry and the Behavioral Sciences at USC Gould School of Law. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Sachs.
Thank you very much for that kind invitation. I am really thrilled and honored to offer welcoming remarks to Mental Health Matters, destigmatizing mental health through positive peer and community support. I only regret today, if I have any regrets at all, is that I was not able to benefit from a program like this over 30 years ago when I joined the USC faculty at the law school. As I look at the USC WorkWell Center, I see a flourishing community of individuals dedicated to advancing the health, mental health, and well-being of our community. How much smoother my path would have been the past 3 decades had I known you all back then. Now, we know that telling stories is perhaps the most potent way to combat stigma. And so briefly, I will say something about myself. I am a woman with chronic schizophrenia. I've spent hundreds of days in psychiatric hospitals and could easily have lived most of my life on the back ward of a long-forgotten psych hospital. I first became seriously ill as a Marshall Scholar studying at Oxford University, studying ancient philosophy there. I was in my early 20s, which is typically the time schizophrenia appears in women. Despite much resistance, I found my way to a psychiatric hospital with strong encouragement from my doctors at the university, whom I had seen at the urging of a friend who was himself a neurologist. I had graduated as class valedictorian at Vanderbilt University and been accepted as a Marshall Scholar at Oxford, but I was in terrible shape. I spent much of my time wandering the streets of Oxford, mumbling to myself, wildly gesticulating, and contemplating various ways to die by suicide to rid the world of my evil. The journey from Oxford to USC has been long and hard, and I still struggle with my schizophrenia, although time and treatment have largely helped me tame my illness. My message to you today is that my journey need not have been so long or so hard. You see, when I joined the USC faculty, I didn't have the benefit of the USC WorkWell Center or anything like it. I grew up in an era where mental illness was not to be discussed, certainly not revealed in a professional context amongst colleagues. Today, thankfully, things are changing. The USC WorkWell Center is an agent of this change here on our campus. Every USC staff and faculty member should think of Julie, Chantal, and Cindy and their colleagues as invaluable resources for our mental health and well-being. These people are here for us, and they're taking the initiative to make our community stronger and healthier. Thank you for all your work and dedication. Let's all clap. I want to tell a brief anecdote that captures one part of the challenge that we who have lived experience of mental illness face. While I was preparing to write my student note for the Yale Law Journal on the use of mechanical restraints in psychiatric hospitals, I commented to a preeminent Yale Law School faculty member who was also a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst that he surely would agree that being restrained is degrading, painful, and frightening. He looked at me in a knowing way and replied, "You don't really understand, Ellen. These people are psychotic. They're different from you and me. Restraints don't affect them the way they would affect us." I did not have the courage in that moment to tell him that no, we aren't any different from him. We don't like to be strapped down to a bed and left there to struggle for many hours or days any more than he would. As happened in that exchange with my professor many years ago, people with lived experience of mental illness are often the victims of, quote, other. That is, we're made to feel other than, less than those around us. In response, we often stay silent. Please don't let this happen to you. Use the USC WorkWell Center as a resource, a community of colleagues to embrace the richness and the beauty that we all bring to the USC community. That will help us as individuals and as a community to flourish. In closing, I want to offer some advice from my own experience. First, take care of yourselves. What we eat and how much we sleep, among other things, matter to our mental health. Pay attention to these core aspects of health, as I'm sure will be discussed in this program. Second, be mindful of when you choose to disclose your challenges. Stigma is real, and it is a force to be reckoned with. Use the WorkWell Center, Julie, Chantal, Cindy, and their colleagues as a resource to help navigate when, with whom, and how to have such conversations. Finally, don't be shy about introducing yourself to the WorkWell Center community. If the WorkWell Center were a booth offering free subscriptions to Netflix or Apple TV, HBO Max, I'll bet every person on campus would reach out this week. Please let me share something. The WorkWell Center has stuff for us that's even better than all of that. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm excited about the fantastic speakers we're about to hear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sachs, for that wonderful, wonderful opening for us, and really just your courage for sharing your experience. Thank you so much. And we're very fortunate to have you here with us today and here
Thank you.
at USC and all the great work you've done.
As I said, I am really honored and delighted to be here. So thank you.
Great. Well, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists for today to follow Dr. Ellen Sachs. We have Dr. Cindy Ryan, our Associate Director of Clinical Services at the WorkWell Center. Dr. Toby Fischel, GME Director of Wellness, Clinical Health Psychologist, Clinical Associate Professor in the Department of Pediatrics at the Keck School of Medicine and USC LA General Medical Center. And Dr. Jonathan Wong, Clinical Assistant Professor of Psychiatry and the Behavioral Sciences at Keck School of Medicine, Clinical Director, Care for the Caregiver, Keck Medicine of USC. Today, you'll hear about mental health first aid basics, psychological safety for leadership, and peer-to-peer support, and then we'll end with Q&A. This event is also eligible for the 50 Vitality Points towards your annual Vitality Health Assessment incentive for those who qualify. And with that, I'd like to turn over to Dr. Chantal Sheridan, our co-lead for the Mental Health Subcommittee.
Thank you so much, Julie. Wow, I'm still in a good way reeling from Dr. Sachs's opening. Every time I hear you speak, Ellen, I'm just so moved. There's such humanity and relatability and beauty in your story, and it makes me want to just do better every day. So thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Chantal Sheridan. I am Director of Wellbeing at the Keck School, And I am also Director of Medical Student Wellbeing and an Associate Professor in Clinical Medical Education and Psychiatry. That is a mouthful. And I, along with my wonderful colleague, Dr. Cindy Ryan, co-chair the Mental Health Subcommittee of the USC Healthy Campus Group. My question for our audience is, did you even know that there is a central group at USC working on mental health and that you can be a part of it? Our core tenet here is that mental health is health, and that we're working together toward a world where I can just as easily tell my manager that I need the day off for a panic attack or a depressive episode or a psychotic episode as I would say I have a cough or a cold. And that we might even start to feel proud of these differences and start to cherish them in ourselves and others. So we work on a variety of things. You can see our goals on the left. I won't read them all. But we work on education. So we just put together a fabulous guide to psychotherapy that is awesome. You can access it on our website. We're working on a guide for managers around mental health to be more sensitive to mental health issues in their employees. We also provide meaningful programming like today, but then to me, what is maybe the most important is that we're working on systems and policies to start including and elevating mental health in some of USC's policies around things like time off, leaves of absences, and other topics. And we have many committee members, but we're always looking for more. So if you feel any kind of inspired way after today's presentation, reach out to any one of us, and we're going to welcome you with open arms into our committee, and you can help us do this good work too. So thank you, and next slide.
Great. Thank you so much, Chantel. And we so appreciate all the work that you and Cindy and the rest of the Mental Health Subcommittee do for USC faculty and staff. As always, a reminder to stretch, stand, move anytime you need to during today's presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Cindy Ryan.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here and, so enamored of Dr. Sachs and your courageous journey and a great example to us all. So we may need ourselves during this time, our own mental health first aid. We're going to look at what is that? How can we be there? We are really, again, in a constant changing time. And we've just been through a very challenging experience in the transition of this semester as it's moving into the season of summer. And how we learn and stay responsive and understand what we need when we face those times that challenge the normal human responses. So I want us to come back to a sense of how we reflect, how we look at restoration. How do we want to really take these experiences that we have and bring them into health and well-being and move forward with our own mental health? So with compassion and with understanding, we want to build on that. So for our next slide, I'd like to say, yes, the well-being goals are mind, body, and spirit. And we know there are these essentials for positive mental health. It's a very fluid and open and changing and responsive time. It ebbs and flows, and we know we need essentials to feel emotionally safe, to feel secure, to feel that we're comforted and reassured, that we have caring when we have a time of stress. So these are natural forming needs that help us build our resilience, and they ebb and flow, and we can bring them into our daily life, into our relationships. So I'd like to go there a little bit more and say, okay, where do we find these conditions that can really help and promote our sense of these conditions and these ways for positive mental health? So moving forward, we're going to see, okay, there's lots of emotional needs that we have. Trust, and loyalty, stability, to feel heard, to feel we have empathy and we're understood. And these sources are living in our lives every day. Some may have affiliations in one way or another. We may need more trust with our friends. We may feel we get our sense of feeling heard in our faith community. We may know that we turn to our family when we really need a sense of stability. So these are the ways in which we weave in. It's not a linear world. it's a very holistic world. It's one where we draw upon what do we need at what point in time, and where and how can we build them into our way of life that becomes part of that total health and well-being. And I'm going to venture down the path of how we create communication, how we create connection, how we build a sense of community, and how that weaves into our culture. So this is how we weave and create a positive mental health culture. So going forward, I just am so glad to be with the Mental Health Committee. They are so dedicated and so sincere about what helps. And these are some of our goals: destigmatizing, making resources accessible, training our leaders and managers and supervisors in the language of how do you help when someone is suffering. So we've turned to the Mental Health First Aid Program from the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. And we, sponsor these trainings, and we want to create more awareness and communication, and really build how that language leads into resources. So there are a couple of concepts that I want to show you. The first is actually an algorithm that's very much a part of what is taught. And it's things we know, things we do oftentimes naturally, but we just bring them forward and we assess, we look, is there intent for harm? What do we need to do? Can we listen fully, non-judgmentally, with presence, to give reassurance and information, and encourage professional help, and learn and know what those resources are and how we engage in self-help and other supportive strategies. So the committee has been very dedicated to branching out and creating many guides and resource materials. So when those conversations are happening, they are accessible to you, and encouraging self-help and peer support, which we're going to talk more about, and knowing that programs like the National Alliance for Mentally Ill, there are self-help groups everywhere that help us. So we've been moving toward how do we destigmatize? How do we open up that dialogue? And moving forward, we're going to see why. Stigma does so much. It causes us to label. It causes us to sort of not see the whole person. And when you look at that, you will hear that there's that sense of holding back. And as you'll see it going forward, we're going to actually realize that stigma makes it really hard to talk about challenges, to feel safe to share challenges. It causes concealment. And when we withhold and when we retreat, then others around sense and will treat. So we want to create an open space where we turn toward one another and we offer the ways in which we can communicate. So the concept I really enjoyed so much learning from this program was this next one, which is communicating as you see the whole person. And Ellen, you just said it so beautifully. You are a whole person. And we carry our vulnerabilities, we carry our challenges. So in the next slide, you'll see the first person language. And this is what's really meaningful in a way that we are a whole person. We're not a schizophrenic or, a homeless person. We may even look at it in terms of our general health and well-being. I am a diabetic. Well, you're a whole person, and you may live with diabetes or successfully treating a mental health condition, or a person who has used drugs and finding hope and recovery. So thinking on this realm of how we consider the whole person, that we all carry something that we're learning to grow from. So as we go forward, we have a sense of communication, and that communication is really about making connection, really learning what we need and want to share with one another. And turning toward one another is really about asking, and asking ourselves personally, what am I holding in my own bias thinking? How might that be conveyed? How might I be creating, an invisible barrier to opening up and talking about real things? How can I be open? How can I reach out? So the basis of building that communication bridge is making connection and building understanding. I like to follow a kind of a acronym of, humility, acceptance, and transformation. Then when we just turn toward one another with that sense of openness, then we can create that kind of change. As we began looking at different forms of research, because we were thinking about, well, how we have these traditional forms of mental health, waiting and having someone call, and, we will let them to. I came across a really amazing article in the field of social work and mental health. And it described, in the next slide, you'll see assertive outreach. And I just thought that was an amazing concept, that we can reach out. And part of doing that is creating a condition that senses their need, understands the value of creating safety. So we trust our senses, how we notice changes, how we center on compassion, how we create gentle curiosity, how we ask for understanding and empathy in listening and imagining how things must feel, listening for the needs and hearing the strengths, how incredibly strong people are when they're persevering and they're seeking help and they continue to work toward building their best health, and how we build hope. So looking at how we build assertive outreach connects us to building our next stage, which is that sense of community. And so that really goes on going forward with our values. And our values really are very clear. Greater Good Science Center, as you'll see, is a great source of mindfulness and building health and happiness. So as you see in our next slide, you'll notice those values. We really thrive when we are experiencing and living the values of these in our community, that we want to promote each other's welfare. We want to see things with a wider perspective, to have the compassion, and we share suffering in many ways. We've seen really intense times lately, and we wonder where do we land in this? And many times we need just to know we are all suffering in these experiences together. So how do we want to bond and really turn toward understanding and helping each other? That diversity is the miracle of uniqueness, and growing into that. Empathy, forgiveness, and releasing and letting go of old habits or beliefs that really aren't part of how we want to be. Gratitude, we know, is essential for our health and well-being and happiness. So staying present, staying in touch with our sense of purpose, and keeping that social connection, because this is how we build that culture of caring. So my final slide is really about what we need to do, that our leaders really need to become a part of our community. We can all lead. We can all move forward, do an assertive outreach. We can ask each other how you're doing. We can be responsive to need. We can encourage that people take time for self-care and offer and communicate within your work team, days for wellness, days for positive growth and thinking and understanding. And under knowing that leadership has the power of choices. When we make a choice, we are creating that culture, that shift, that movement toward our best health. So I applaud everyone. So let's think about this value. We know we have the USC values of excellence. So let's be excellent to each other and share what goodness can come from that. So thank you so much. And I want to hand it to my excellent friend, Toby.
Thank you
Great.
so
Thank you
much.
so much, Cindy. Toby, screen is yours.
Let me get this up. Great. Thank you so much. That was a perfect lead in, Cindy. I wrote down a couple of things that you said. We are all suffering and there is great good. And how do we connect to that? So we're going to be talking about psychological safety and how that can create beautiful leaders and a different kind of leadership. And so I am so honored to be here and inspired that we have so many people who are here today, right? Almost 130 people. So that says a lot about how much you all care about this. So why psychological safety? Well, a lot of things are creating situations right now where we don't feel very safe. And so during these times, especially during these times, this is an essential topic, I think, for us to be talking about. So what do we actually all really want? We all want to be valued members. We want to be on a winning team, and we want to have an inspiring mission. And when we have all that together, we actually feel good about the work we do. We feel inspired. We don't feel so tired. We want to keep doing. We want to keep creating, and we want to be inspiring to others. We don't always have that experience. So I love this definition by Brene. What is any definition out there? This is one, which is anyone who holds him or herself accountable for finding potential in people and processes. Anyone who holds himself or herself themselves accountable for finding potential in people and processes. So seeing the good, finding what each person can bring to the table and really nurturing that. And Booker T. Washington said, if you want to lift yourself up, lift up someone else. And so all of you here today are leaders right now, because you can leave today and you can practice these things, and you will be lifting other people up and making people feel wanted, needed, belonging, connected. And that's going to make all of our culture, all of our environments a whole lot better. So there are different leadership models, as I said. So think about the ones that you have experienced in your work. Don't let them see you sweat. That was the one that I had most of the time that I was brought up in. Don't show anything. Don't show that you're vulnerable or anxious. Or if you're tough and you're armored, you'll be respected, right? So don't really be vulnerable and don't show any feelings. And what we know now is that actually that does not create good leadership, does not create safety at all. Because vulnerability is the place where people feel like they can feel safe enough to say, me too, I'm scared. How do we do this together? And it's the birthplace of what we call creativity. So my whole time here, I'm going to be talking about role modeling being human. That way your team will be less fearful. They'll be more willing to say, hey, we made a mistake here. Hey, can we correct it? They'll innovate more, and they'll be more honest when something is going wrong. So vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. So a quick story. I finished my residency as a clinical and health psychologist, and I got my first job. I don't even know how I got this job, but I was the co-clinical director of a psychiatric hospital in a major medical center in Texas. So I was very young, I was very new, but they said, yes, we want you to do this. I wanted to do such a good job, and I loved the patients, and I loved the staff, and I loved coming to work every day. And I put on a 3-piece suit I wore little skirts and little jackets, and I had high heels, and I cut my hair, and I had this view of what I was supposed to look like. And I had an armor on, and I was gonna take charge. I was nice, I was kind, but no one really knew me until about a year into this job. And we found out that one of our patients who got discharged about a month later, this person died from suicide. And we sat around and talked about it. I was with my team of about 25 therapists, and we were crying, and we were debriefing, and we were talking. And I would not stop that from happening. I was feeling it with everybody else. And at the end of that meeting, a very brave team member said to me, this is the first time we actually see you. Thank you. Thank you for showing us who you really are. Now we could really be with you and be on your team. And this was very early on in my leadership experience, and I will never forget that. And I changed everything about how I was leading from that day forward. So why do we do this? Why do we try to create psychological safety? It's because it actually creates innovation. It helps with diversity, unlocking the benefits of diversity. We want it, our environments are healthier when we have a more diverse environment, when people feel safe to come on board and come onto the team if they don't look like you or sound like you, but they feel like you want them there. It helps us adapt. And boy, during COVID, we certainly needed to adapt very quickly. It helps with performance. People want to try new things and they're more innovative. It actually makes employees happier. It helps people stay at their job, and mostly it's actually the right thing to do. So that's why we're talking about this. So this is an interesting assessment. You can take this for yourself really quickly. When I do workshops, we actually do a whole poll, but this is a 5-question assessment that you could see where you are on your team right now. So if I make a mistake on my team, it is often held against me. So this team's not doing very well because I got a 4 on this. Members of my team are able to bring up problems and tough issues, kind of in the middle. It is safe to take a risk on this team, right in the middle. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's difficult to ask other members of this team for help. No, don't ask for help. And working with team members, my unique skills and talents are valued and utilized. Not really. This is a team that needs help. This is a team that needs someone to come in and say, what is going on? And let's do something about it. So these are the kinds of issues we want to think about on the teams we're on and the teams that we're leading, so that you might want to, if you're leading a team right now, bring this assessment tool and do it anonymously and see how your team is doing. It's very interesting. I've done this on teams that I've been leading, and I get to hear some things that I maybe aren't aware of. So some people say, well, if we're creating this very nice, kind, psychologically safe environment, will anyone actually do any work? And it seems too soft, and I don't think that that's a good idea. But if you look at these quadrants, it's actually the exact opposite. So you could have very high psychological safety, but if you don't have any motivation, if you don't have any accountability, yes, someone's in a comfort zone, or they're in, they don't have any psychological safety at all, but you have put a lot of expectations on them, they're going to be apathetic and they're not going to actually do a lot, and they're eventually going to leave. But if you have a lot of expectations, a lot of accountability, and you do not create psychological safety, people are in the anxiety zone. They shut down. They're not going to tell you when things are going wrong, and they actually are going to have a really hard time. So we want that sweet spot, that yellow spot, where you absolutely have expectations. Say, this is what we need from you. And also, we welcome you here. And when things aren't going right, we want to hear from you. And I want you to tell me how I can create a space that inspires you to you being the best that you can be. So a word about feedback. This is a story about a resident from a few years ago. So I'm the director of GME Wellness, and we have 1,000 residents and fellows, and they're in their medical training, and they have to get feedback a lot. And one of them was early on in their intern year, and they had a very hard time, and they were very anxious, and they moved across the country, and it was just in the first 2 weeks of them being here. So it's very crazy time. And they actually got feedback that someone said to them, you are the worst resident we have ever had. I don't know why you're in medicine, and you shouldn't be here. Later, talking to that supervisor attending, they actually thought that they were saying things harshly to motivate them to do better. So the intention was good. What it ended up doing was it shut that resident down, and they did worse every day, every week for months, until I got involved and we had a whole team together, and they had a different supervisor mentor who said very different things, which is, you're having a hard time. We're so glad you're here. I'm going to work with you, and we're going to figure out what's going on and get you to where you need to be. That calmed this resident down. And 3 years later, this resident is now a chief resident and is one of the stars, because they needed someone to hold them and to support them, be honest, but honest with compassion. It saved that person's integrity later. But the honesty without compassion is actually brutality, and it causes shame and shutdown, and that's not helpful. So a little bit about belonging, not just including. So we talk a lot about DEI now, and I want to offer, it's really, I think, DEIB, and across the country, we're starting to say DEIB because someone can be included with diversity and we could have some equity. So we can invite them to the table and say, here's a chair for you at the table. We're going to include you, but it doesn't mean that they feel like they belong. It doesn't mean that we actually listen to what they have to say. There's a very difference between including and belonging. So DEIB is a different frame of reference, and it really includes everyone and wants everyone at the table. So think about when you didn't belong, maybe at your home or your family, school, friend group, or work, and what experiences made you feel like you weren't belong. Are any of these categories something that helped you not feel like you belonged? Age, gender, color of your skin, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, a disability. And I'll say, when I've done these kind of workshops and I've asked people, 95% of people, 95% at least, say, yes, I have felt like I didn't belong because of one of those categories. And many people will say because of a number of those categories. I know for myself, being a PhD in a world where they are mostly MDs, I see some people shaking their heads. Sometimes I don't feel like I belong, and I have to actually work harder to get my voice across because people are not paying attention. Being a woman and being identified as a woman, I am very often not heard unless I am the one who I am assertive enough now where I will speak my mind, even if someone's not asking for my opinion, because I think it's really important for me to feel like I belong. So I'm going to make myself feel like I belong. But that shouldn't be my job. It should be the job of whoever is supervising and the leader of the team. So fitting in is different from belonging. Fitting in is actually trying to become something you're not so that you're accepted. And we have a lot of that going on. If we're a leader, we want to actually help people be who they are and feel like they belong. And why don't we do that? Why don't we make space for this? Oftentimes leaders feel like we don't have time. That causes, we need too much space for that. And actually, if we think about it, for number 4 here, who has the hardest time in toxic work environments? Most often it is the most marginalized communities. So if we really are saying we want to have a DEIB, diverse, wonderful culture of safety, then we actually have to do a lot to help people feel like they belong. So it takes a lot of courage on the leader's plate. And actually, so sometimes a leader might need to say, wow, you're the only woman here in a room of 10. I wish someone would have said that to me. And I really want to hear what you have to say. I have yet to hear that from anyone. I will speak up, but I want someone to say, Toby, what do you think about this? Here we are talking about women's health and you're the only woman in the room. What do you think? Wouldn't that be nice? Or I have done this where there's one person of color in the room and I say, I want to hear what you have to say. Because often people who are in marginalized groups are actually not given the pulpit, they're not given the microphone, and we need to actually help them do that. So a real quick word about real conversations. So sometimes we think when someone is talking about their life, it's activism, and we want to say, that's activism, we don't want to talk about it here, that has nothing to do with work. We are in a time where there are hard things going on, and it's not about activism, it's about living your life. So for example, a while back when there was a lot of Asian violence against Asian people, and people were talking about it, that was because they had to talk about that because that was about their life. And so I want to just encourage people to think about when someone says, I'm having a hard time, I'm having a hard time. Toby is having a hard time with the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. And I am a Jewish person, and I am having a hard time with anyone being hurt, anyone. And if someone asks me how I'm doing, I actually say that. And that's not activism, that's living in a really tough world right now. So I thought about that. So consider these questions. I'm going to just pick 3. Describe a leader who you work with who was inspiring, right? What qualities did they have? Describe an environment where it was oppressive. What qualities did they have? And number 6, what do you do to create a sense of belonging with your own team? There are a lot of things that we can do to help with that. So I try to have a presumption where everyone has a story, and I don't know everyone's story. Just like we heard Ellen Sachs' little part of her story. Thank you so much for sharing that. We now know more about your story. And when we know people's stories, we actually feel differently towards them. We feel more open to them. And some of the things that we have here on campus, like Helping Healers Heal at LA General and the Care for Caregiver at Keck Medicine, those are ways for us to hear each other's stories. So who we are is how we lead. Who we are as a person is how we lead. I let my hair grow. I got rid of all my suits and my high heels because that's just not me. And what can we do now? Show your team you're engaged. Let your team know that you understand. Avoid blaming. Be self-aware, like Cindy said. Know your nip negativity in the bud. Include and encourage all of your decision making to feedback. Space, don't take space. Make space for those who don't take space. Champion your team and be a good citizen. Here are 4 great resources. And on that note, I'm turning it over to Jonathan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Toby, and thank you everyone for being here today and our speakers really covering such important topics. My name is Jonathan. I'm here today to share about peer-to-peer support and the role that everyone can play in supporting the mental health of your colleagues during May Mental Health Awareness Month and hopefully beyond. The idea behind the type of support that I'm going to talk about today is really short conversations with long-lasting impacts. And before I get into the background and research and some tools that I hope everyone can use, I'm hoping everyone can do a quick exercise with me today. Just think back quickly to the last time you were stuck in the rain without an umbrella. So if you're anything like me, you never have an umbrella when you need it. I usually leave mine by the door or in the car, or I take a look outside and it's sprinkling and I think I can make it. It's not too bad. Or I don't have time for the umbrella. It's going to get in the way. But if you've been caught outside in a downpour, which you can neither predict or control, then the umbrella becomes vital. And what I've learned from talking to healthcare workers as part of the Keck Medicine Care for the Caregiver team is that the overwhelming majority of healthcare workers actually embrace the inherent stress of their job and find the responsibility or the ups and downs or the hardships in their day-to-day work to be really meaningful. It's a way they're contributing, giving back, and really what keeps them going. What can overwhelm healthcare workers, and actually anyone for that matter, is dealing with the daily inherent job stressors. And then on top of that, there's experiencing the additional stress that is impossible to predict or have control over. And that's the moment where a sprinkle of rain that you might be used to or comfortable with becomes a downpour. And it's something that you don't expect. And in these moments, getting support from someone else, someone who's also out in the rain, who understands your plight, this can be so impactful. It provides really a reprieve from the situation or the scenario that really no one else can. So as a society, we're hearing more and more about the factors that affect the mental health and wellness of healthcare workers that's been going on for decades now. Even before the pandemic, the National Academy of Medicine found that burnout had reached a crisis level within the US healthcare workforce, with 35 to 55% of nurses and physicians and almost 45 to 60% of medical students reporting symptoms of burnout. In 2022, the US Surgeon General put out an advisory on this crisis, outlining the effects that burnout can have on healthcare workers, patients, healthcare systems, and society at large. And the list is really sobering. It includes mental health and relational difficulties for healthcare workers, lower quality of care for patients, healthcare workers leaving the job and putting a greater strain on the system and then their fellow colleagues, and then ultimately worsening population health outcomes. The contributing factors to this problem are really spread out between societal, healthcare system, organizational, and work environments. And all of these factors each deserve their own exploration and attention. But for the purposes of today, really they can be summed up with the understanding that the everyday healthcare worker feels the weight of these factors and is really impacted by them. So overcoming this burden cannot be left to the individual. We cannot expect someone to stand in the rain and not get wet. Rather, the problem or issue that it really does take a group effort to address. And here are some of the solutions that can get us there. At the center of the solutions is the principle of creating a culture of healing, community, and connection. And it is really the driving forces behind peer-to-peer support. And really what our Care for the Caregiver team has sought to address through our own peer support program for healthcare workers have been running for the last 3 years. So for our team, we consider anyone in Keck Medicine to be a caregiver. We do not differentiate between job role or type or whether you deal with patients or not. We really believe that being in healthcare is like a team sport. Everyone has a role, and so peer support is offered to everybody. And they are quick 10-minute conversations with someone who does a very similar job to you and understands some of the dynamics that you may be facing. So if you look at the research behind peer support programs for healthcare workers as a whole, you'll find that having the ability to process stressful events with a colleague who has peer support skills can really mitigate the second victim effect, which is the natural physical and mental reaction anyone would have after being exposed to life or death situations or the pain and suffering of others really on a day-to-day basis. We do know if people are not supported through these elements of the job, they're more likely to experience cynicism. And really, that is something that their personal effectiveness and contributions at work starts to feel distant or waning, and that really does contribute to burnout. And so having a supportive space to voice concerns about the ups and downs can really be an important preventive measure before it's too late. And really, just the thought of knowing there's a support network of people who care about what you're going through goes a long way in shifting perceptions around the work environment. So there's that job satisfaction piece. And in the case of peer support programs, they can really help in people's perceptions of what the job is like for them, when it's good, when it's bad, what is it like going to work, what is it like leaving work. So our experiences have mirrored what is found in research, as the feedback on our program really highlights similar elements of being able to get assistance in navigating some unforeseen stressors. The power of empathy. I think, Toby, you were talking about compassion. I think that really does capture so much of what people want in a moment when they've done everything they could possible and they're still hurting. And really, there's an overview here that I want to go through to take whatever work environment or team dynamic may be going on for you and see if peer-to-peer techniques might be applicable. You could take any of these quotes. Really, some of them are saying here that I wasn't aware this was available to me. It was really helped me with anxiety I was feeling, or this is such a great resource. Helped me overcome the feeling that I had done something wrong. You could take any of these quotes and put it into a different job, a different role, a different industry, and people are facing moments where they're going through similar things. So this is by no means particular to healthcare, but the idea here is that if each and every one of us can draw on these elements, we can make a big difference in our colleagues' lives. So being a peer support It involves the ability to convey empathy, to listen and explore personal reactions, and perhaps the hardest of all, not to jump in with solutions, but rather draw upon the person's own strengths, abilities, and motivations, and whatever they might be helpful to them to move forward. And to do this, first of all, a peer supporter may just listen and reflect some of the emotions that an individual might be experiencing, but has not had the time or space to connect with or even normalize. These emotions can include the ones listed here, such as sadness, shame, fear, or anger, or the desire to isolate. And these are all natural responses to stress. These are all things that we go through as humans, but it can be hard to face alone. So in a peer support session, you have the opportunity to do that with someone else who wants to listen, wants to be there for you to reflect. Next, the use of open-ended questions can be really helpful to highlight what a person's already doing for themselves, and that can shift the narrative from feeling helpless or without options to maybe seeing things in a different way. And again, these are all questions that draw upon what the person can control, what they can do. And oftentimes we encourage our peer supporters to just let people know that they believe in the person they're talking to, that they can overcome the things, or how did you manage to even get the courage to talk to me today? It's not easy to talk about our struggles. Last, providing a concrete plan for moving forward can be immensely helpful during times of stress. And some of the tools that we utilize really are about breaking things into numbers and then putting specific things to the numbers, either what you want to stay at from 1 to 10, or how would you just move up a half number. When we're overwhelmed, when things are uncertain, the desire is strong to fix the situation and find that solution, of course. But getting there can be the really stressful part. So breaking things down into smaller chunks really can be really helpful. So if 1 is the worst you've ever been and 10 is the best, if you're at a 3 today, okay, what would it look like to get to 3.5 in the next day? What does it look like to other people? How would they know that you're trying here? What even would it be like to take a small step forward? And that's the goal and hope of peer support. Our program has seen a increase over the last 3 years of peer support sessions and deployments. It's really been heartwarming to see how many people have volunteered their time to support their colleagues, and building that community has taken time, building that awareness that we've talked about, just being able to say, yes, I would want to talk to someone. Yes, I am having a tough week, a tough month, a tough day. It's really been something that we're hoping to continue to build. And I do want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here and learn about all these great elements of how to support mental health. And I will turn it back over.
Thank you so much. Fantastic presentation from all 3 presenters. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Toby, and thank you, Jonathan. I know that was a lot, and really appreciate you sharing and really just giving us a lot of inspiration and things to think about and really just hope going forward. If you don't mind stopping the screen share, I will end here with some resources. Cindy, if you want to start talking about our WorkWell services while I pull up the slides, that would be great.
Well, thank you so much. I just really believe it is a community of caring from all of us. We all need each other at various times for various reasons. So just know that your employee assistance program, the WorkWell Center, we provide the confidential setting. We want to be there for counseling. We want to be there for coaching, consulting. When in doubt, find out. Don't hesitate. Let's partner together. Let's share resources. So when, don't hesitate. It's not about holding back. It's a moving toward one another. So let it be known, and we'll be there. Thanks so much.
And just a reminder that we have this health and well-being resource directory that is currently being edited right now and updated. It's essentially an inventory of all of our health and well-being resources, and we're really here to support you and share all the resources that USC provides to you as faculty and staff. And Cindy, do you want to do this one?
Well, yes, just so you know, part of getting ourselves familiar with all the resources. And that's way, if you have questions, if you want to know what would you offer at a point in time when you're having a crucial conversation, let us know. These are things you can keep in your desk and handy to give to others. So these are part of the mental health subcommittee resource guides. So we have internal and external resources. So please just go into the website and learn. We have additional benefits through LifeWorks. So there is a lot of layers of support that we can find and will help you navigate. So that's it.
Great. Well, we have maybe 1 or 2 minutes if there's any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you have any, feel free to put it in there and complete the evaluation form. We really want feedback from you. Let us know what you thought about today's session. We're also sharing in the chat 2 resources here. We have a mental health therapy guide, as well as ideas that our mental health subcommittee has put together to support you in celebrating Mental Health Awareness Month this month, or even for next year. Toby, go ahead.
There was a question in the Q&A. It said, stigma aside, how do we balance all of what you're saying with professionalism, boundaries, and not oversharing or making our colleagues feel uncomfortable? There are things about me that I'd share outside of work, not necessarily at work. Absolutely, that's a great question. And I think people need to earn the right to hear our stories. So depending on who the person is, if they've earned the right to hear your story and you feel comfortable, then you share. Otherwise, you don't share with people all of who you are, just whatever you feel comfortable. So I think part of it is us being very intentional about how we share and who we share with. Unfortunately, we don't spend a lot of time with each other because some people are on Zoom, some people are in person now. And when we were all in person, we would see each other and we would develop these relationships, right? So I think we have to, one, work harder to develop relationships on Zoom or in hybrid forms. And also we have every right to share and not share depending on how safe we feel. Thank you for that question.
Yeah. And I would just say, that's such a good point, Toby, because, how do we reach out if we're in a moment? And I think sometimes people think we have to have a very, complicated form of communication. It's sometimes very simple. I've noticed a change. I hope you're okay. If you need anything, please let me know. I can listen. Simple words of sincere caring just go a long, long way. So, don't hold back, and then trust yourself. If you feel like, oh, okay, I've shared what I need to share, that's fine. There are many, as you see, many sources and places to go to create a safe haven to open up and share.
I think one thing our team has tried is we do a color check-in at the, when possible, at the beginning of huddles, green, yellow, or red, kind of letting people know where you're at for the day. And the understanding is if you don't have to explain the color, you can just say it. And then if the understanding all too is people could reach back out afterwards if they want to find out more. And I think just being able to have that openness as part of huddling together has helped bring the team together and tie together some of the things in the question.
And someone's typing a question. Toby, do you want to address that since you're typing?
Sure. So there was a question, how would we improve on reducing self-depreciation? That's a great question. We're as humans, we're used to judging others and mostly ourselves, and we're not very compassionate to ourselves. And so there's a whole world of self-compassion that you can look at and get help from. Kristen Neff, NEFF, is the world leader on it. She has funny podcasts, she has videos, she has books, and you can talk to any of the people we have shared about if someone really talks to themselves really negatively, we can work on that. So depending on who you go to, really work on that with a therapist, a coach, a mentor, and also go to Kristen Neff. And she has wonderful resources. I use her stuff all the time.
Yeah, Toby, that's so great. I love that too. And I just heard this client said this one thing that was really, meaningful one time where, she was a roommate and she was really critical of herself and really just disparaging about how she handled a situation. And her friend said, "Hey, wait a minute. That you're my best friend. Don't talk to my best friend like that." And it was really remembering, how you would really create the conversation with your own best friend, who you would tell you about being to manage up and encourage. So that had a lot of meaning for me to say, hey, we don't treat our best friend that way, you know? So, um, anything
Great.
else?
Well, we're at time, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And don't forget to take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Speakers, if you can please stay on for just a minute.